And welcome back to another edition of All or Not According to Jack with your host, Jack Toledano. So here we are with yet another episode of Reviewing the Reviewer. So far, I think these episodes are going very well, and I'm going to continue on with them for the foreseeable future. So let's just, without further ado, let's just get right into it. So last Saturday night, uh, I woke up very early. I don't know, 2:30, 3 in the morning. I couldn't get back to sleep. So I needed something to watch. So I figured, why not put Tubi on? And why don't we do another dry run through that a list of 600 plus videos and music and see what I could come up with. And I came up with a really good one. So when this was in its infancy, I didn't think I would really do too much about, metal. It was mostly going to be about classic rock. So now I've done Deep Purple in rock. I've done one about Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. I've now done one about Fleetwood Mac rumors. So for number four, and I had a few that I really liked that I was going to work on, but I kind of flip flopped the order around. I'm not going to say a certain band is going to have a second reviewing the reviewer, but I won't say who just yet. So flipping the order around, I decided to make this my number four. Let's get it up. Woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil sends the beast with wrath, because he knows the time is short. Let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. So that's it. Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast. And what better way to start this video? And again, this is another one of those classic albums. This one is from 2001, whereas Rumors, they put it together in 1997. And it starts out, just as I mentioned, with Vincent Price doing his speech at the beginning of the title track, Number of the Beast. Uh, uh, and I promise you, this is not going to go as long-winded as Fleetwood Mac Rumors did. I have a few less notes, but again, they interviewed all the members of the band. They had Bruce, they had Adrian, they had Dave. Of course, they had Steve Harris, and even their drummer at the time, Clyde Burr. And then they did speak with Nico McBrain later in the episode. So this one only went to about 52 minutes. So they started with live footage of Number of the Beast. Basically, all the band discussed it, including Clive, as I mentioned. Bruce, and again, during the live footage, this is where you have to remember this is like 1982. Bruce had long hair, but here he's talking in 2001 with short hair, very similar to mine. He was talking about how 4 hours recording the beginning of Number of the Beast, and he's just going out of his mind because they're trying to nail down this beginning of Number of the Beast. And we'll get into their producer. It was Martin Birch, and Martin Birch just kept pressing to try and make that opening verse perfect, leading up to that primal scream of Bruce. And Bruce is getting pissed off. He's throwing a fit. I think he threw a chair. They mentioned he threw a chair in the studio. But you know what? To Martin Birch's credit, he wanted it to be right. Thank God. And it was. and that's a song that they to this day they play on stage as one of their encores. It's basically a showstopper. How could you, over the years, Maiden has, changed their set list a lot, and they've taken a lot of their classics out, but Number of the Beast is one that just stands the test of time and just always gets played. Uh, my first comment, and this is the first, here I am, 3 a.m. in the morning watching this. And up until Number of the Beast, I hadn't even thought about doing this. I'm sitting there singing along to all these songs as they're talking about them. And, I'm playing air guitar and air bass. And it was the coolest thing. Gotta love it. They talk, then, Steve Harris makes his first appearance. He's sitting there at the board, he's talking, and there's knock on the studio door, and in walks Eddie, bringing him a tray of tea. Imagine that, Eddie bringing him tea. It was the funniest thing. Was mentioned that and they kind of bounced around a little bit. It was mentioned that Maiden were considered more of a quasi punk metal band when they had Paul Di'Anno as their lead singer. And again, he didn't have long hair. He didn't really have that metal look, that classic metal look. He had more of a punk look. Basically, they talked about how it was the early stages of new wave of British metal. So what they were doing is they were taking these metal bands in their infancy and they were kind of packaging them together and setting them out on tour to start the movement. Bruce Dickinson being in Samson at the time, and I guess Samson toured with Iron Maiden here and there a few times, and with Bruce looking on from afar, thinking to himself, wow, the possibilities that I could do with this band. My first comment, it's funny, they show Paul Di'Anno's stage attire of metal and studs, but yet throughout this entire video, they never mentioned Judas Priest. The hell is that all about? They talk about some other metal bands. They talk about Megadeth, Metallica, the likes of all these metal bands, but they never mentioned Judas Priest. I think we'll get into that a little bit. 10-minute mark. They're on the verge of a breakthrough. Rod Smallwood was their manager. They just didn't think that they could do it with Paul Di'Anno. I don't think they thought that he had the range or the right. I guess Steve Harris didn't think that he had the right, and they don't mention this in the video to their credit, but I don't think Steve Harris thought that Paul Di'Anno had the right work ethic. He was more of a partier and stay out late guy, and he even mentioned that we're a rock band. We're not supposed to be punching cards. It's like a 9-to-5 job, but they were on the verge of a breakthrough, and they took it seriously, and they wanted to see what they could do with this band, and it's a great decision. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. But so enter Bruce, who was, as again, watching Maiden from afar. They talk about 22 Acacia Avenue, the amazing riff. Adrian Smith came up with that riff at the age of 18. Steve asked him, let's talk about that song. So they collaborated, and Steve helped them put the finishing touches, and they completed it for the album. And, amazing freaking song. We'll get into So the order of the songs that they talked about: Number of the Beast, 22 Acacia Avenue, which I'm singing at 3 a.m. 22 Acacia Avenue. Da-na-na-na. Met a lady that I know. If you're looking for a good time. Here I am singing it at 3 a.m. Thank God my living room isn't that close to my master bedroom where my wife was sleeping. Talked about The Prisoner, Run to the Hills, Children of the Damned, briefly. Oh no, they did talk about Children of the Damned. Invaders they talked about briefly, not really much discussion, but basically just snippets of the song in the background, and they talked about Hallowed Be Thy Name last. So let's go back to my notes. So they showed Dave Mustaine for the first time, yet still no mention of Judas Priest. Was it contractual? Is it that they just didn't want to admit that Judas Priest took them out in the States in '82, and kind of I guess they don't want to have stated that they were mentored by Priest. I guess they always felt that they were better. That was covered in KK Downing's book, if you read that, about how it was said that we're going to kick their arse when we go on this tour, and kind of piss KK off. The competition between the two bands. So you have to wonder, but sadly, they would eventually overtake Priest, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Very cool sequence leading up to the discussion of The Prisoner. Bruce is, cameras shooting up at Bruce. He is, I don't know, up in a tower or at a church on a second floor, and he's talking about how they, The Prisoner, unbeknownst to me at the time when I first heard this album, was actually about a TV series. And basically, they wanted to use the opening monologue of that show in the song, where he says, "We want information. Information. Who are you? The new number two. Who is number one? I am not a number. I am a free man." So they talk about that. Couple things. Supposedly, Bruce had a hand in co-writing the song, but they couldn't give him any credit because at the time there were contractual agreements still with Samson. So I believe, was it, I think it was, I could be wrong, but I think it was Steve Harris that took full writing credit for the song at the time. Basically, what they discussed was that they needed permission from the show's creator, Patrick McEwen. So what they did was they had their manager, Rod Smallwood, call up this Patrick McEwen, who years later was living in Hollywood. So basically, and Smallwood called him up, and he recited all the stuff that they eventually put on the album, but they Smallwood basically messed it all up, and Bruce is like, "Oh, you're messing it the fuck up, and the guy's gonna shit, and he's not gonna give us permission." I mean, Bruce was very funny the way he said it, but ultimately they did get permission for the intro, and very cool intro it was. I did see Maiden at Jones Beach some years later, and they actually did bring back The Prisoner, and they did have this opening monologue in the beginning, on stage, which I thought was really cool. All right, 20-minute mark. So they show live footage of The Prisoner. Adrian playing a lead break in the studio, which I thought was really cool. He's playing on a Fender Fat Strat, and looked really nice the way he did it. Added a little context to it. Again, some of the things they spoke about were out of order. So Maiden talked about how they wanted Martin Birch to produce them, and Martin's, to his credit, he's like, why didn't they ask me to produce them? But that they just likened it. Steve likened it to the fact that they were too self-conscious. They're like, here's this great guy who's produced, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and Rainbow, and we're just this little shit band that are starting up. But thank God, I think he took them to great heights. So they had no. So at the beginning of Number of the Beast, they had no new material. So they basically had to start anew with the writing. Other than The Prisoner, which was a little snippet that Adrian had. They talk about, and this is a funny story, how Martin had a car accident with a van full of nuns. He got his car, I guess he had a Range Rover, took it to the body shop. They fixed it, and the bill for his car came out to 666 pounds. So hence the name 666, the number of the beast. Scary. I don't know if you guys know, but there's actually a building right near the Roosevelt Field Mall in Garden City, New York, about 10-15 minute drive from me. And there is a building, a green glass building right there with the number 666. Freaking strange. I wouldn't want to work there. The album cover. So let's talk about the album cover. Initially, when they made the album cover, it was all blue. Blue sky. I mean, who puts a blue sky with Eddie and the Devil? So they got it fixed up, and you know what? They made a statement, a very good statement about where they were heading. Dave Murray talked about how with Eddie, Eddie on the covers of their albums, they can live in relative anonymity because they could go to the store and nobody knows who the hell they are. So then they talk about Run to the Hills. They showed some live footage of the promo video. I mean, this live video, they showed in black and white. First, you think they're covered wagons, but they're covered wagons that are driven with motor cars, not with horseback. And then the Native Americans attacking and so on and so forth. They talk about how the song is told from the perspective first from the Native Americans and then from the cavalry, and how it's a song not really fitting with the rest of the album as far as lyrical content or context. There was even suggestion that it was political, but no. Iron Maiden political? Nah. 30-minute mark. They talk about how the album was running late in production. So what did they do? They released Run to the Hills as a single, and it did very well. Yay! The album went to number 1 in the UK charts. They showed the freaking UK charts, and they freaking beat out Barbra Streisand. So freaking cool. I hate Barbra Streisand. When I think of Barbra Streisand, I think of that episode of South Park where they make fun of her nose, and they call it, Mecha Streisand. And so if you look at my nose, right, She even has a bigger nose than me. And Kyle talked about how they could land the stealth bomber on her nose. But way to go, guys! Beat out Barbara Streisand for #1. Uh, so Bruce talked about how music can be taken seriously, not just it's just metal. Uh, Dave Mustaine, of all people, talking about complimenting them about how they had vision. LOL. Dave Mustaine, of all people, guy who got thrown out of Metallica. I guess that forced him to re-examine his life and have some vision. And he did put together a successful band, Megadeth. But nice to hear him talk about they had a overall goal. So they talk about Children of the Damned, very melodic opening with a big chorus. Steve said that there were very many different influences in this song. Again, showing Adrian in the studio, interspersing his guitar playing with a little bit more of a bluesy sound this time. The beginning of Children of the Damned. His bluesy playing didn't make it onto the song on the album, but sounded cool nonetheless. They talk about Glenn and KK, and Priest being a twin guitar attack and being a primo twin guitar attack. I don't think Adrian and Dave get enough credit for how great they are, their greatness. But they, toward the end, we're going to talk about how they were rewarded over the years. Adrian talked about picking up fans all over the world. Dave spoke about how they didn't have airplay. They were not a band that would compromise themselves to come up with radio friendly songs, kind of like Priest did with Breaking the Law, Living After Midnight, You've Got Another Thing Coming. They basically achieved it with touring, whether it be as an opening band or as a headliner, which it would come that right soon. They talked about how driving around the US, they had to drive around in station wagons. They couldn't afford a tour bus in the beginning. Imagine going from station wagons to a tour bus, eventually to a fucking 747. Wow. Okay, so not much more to talk about. Steve, they and the band, they talked about people walking around calling Iron Maiden Satanists. Bruce and Dave calling it all silliness, which I agree with them. I mean, come on. For me, I had an old friend who introduced me to Maiden, and you know what? I liked them from the very beginning. I heard them even before Bruce came on board. Kid would walk around with one of those, what they call shoebox tape recorders, and he played the first opening lines of what's that song from? The very first song on the first, Prowler. That's what it was. The first song on the first Maiden, self-titled Maiden album, and I immediately took notice. I'm like, damn, play that again. That was like really good shit, man. Maiden, I would have to say that, Judas Priest, they were the forerunners of metal, how it became to be formed in the early 80s, but I don't think they could have flown that flag alone without Iron Maiden. Adrian likening the Satanists to people hating Elvis way back when. Imagine. So my father, he was a teenager back in the 50s, and people his age, they listened to Elvis, and they had all the Bible Belt South, uh, calling it the devil's music. Elvis, the devil's music. Now those same Elvis fans, some of those same Elvis fans are sitting there trashing, bands like Maiden and Priest and Metallica and what the hell is it? Uh, Megadeth and all the thrash metal in the mid '80s. Tipper Gore and whatever. So then they talk about Hallowed Be Thy Name last. Basically, Bruce gave it an excellent analogy. I mean, I've used this analogy at times with some of Symphony X's songs. I mean, how basically it's very cinematic, whereas Bruce said it a little in more simpler context. It's like a little movie playing in your head. I'll use the term cinematic. You have this guy condemned to to death. He's gonna, he's on death row, and he's gonna be brought to the gallows pole. The sands of time for me are running low. Martin at the knobs, showing the different guitar parts again, including some pinch harmonics, which I thought were really cool. Some live footage of Hallowed Be Thy Name. One thing they don't talk about is how, and I did a little research into this. 82, we saw that tour, what was to be the Screaming for Vengeance and Number of the Beast tour, Priest and Maiden playing together. I saw them mid to late October? Yeah. So it was mid to late October of 1982. So I remember to this day, my boss wasn't too happy because I needed two Saturdays off and a Friday off, because it was so first it was the Priest and Maiden concert at the Burn Meadowlands Arena. Then it was my cousin Kevin's bar mitzvah. Then the week after that was my brother Andrew's bar mitzvah. So he's like, and I'm sitting there coughing one day at work. He's like, oh, cough during your Jewish holidays. Bosses, gotta love them. It's so funny. My wife and I were watching the Family Feud today, and one of the questions were, how many percentage of the time is your boss in a bad mood? So this guy, I'd have to say, I don't know, 60%. The other 40%, he was a rip roaring riot, but watch out for that 60%. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, so I saw Priest and Maiden at the Burn Meadowlands Arena. Hard to believe that 1 year later, on the Peace of Mind tour, the follow-up album to Number of the Beast, they freaking headlined Madison Square Garden in their own right. You know what? Damn man, you gotta give Martin Birch and Rod Smallwood a ton of credit. I mean, to this day, they're able to still sell out the hockey arenas, whereas Priest, I mean, back in 2005, I saw them on I forget the name of the album. Let's go there. Let's find out what album that was. Oh, or Redeemer of Souls. That's it. So yeah, so they still sold most of the Jones Beach Theater, but after that, you know what? They were only selling, I don't know, 8,000 seats at best in these arenas. Whereas Maiden, I saw them in Brooklyn at that new crap arena there, but they basically sold it out. They had to add a second show. So credit to, and it all started with this album. They, as Dave Mustaine said, they had a vision. They followed that vision. You know, some great producing by Martin Birch, some great managing and promotion by Rod Smallwood, uh, having Eddie, marketable face, and some amazing chops. I mean, you know, Steve Harris, the bassist leader, amazing freaking bass player. Uh, Again, Dave Murray and Adrian Smith, I don't think they get enough credit as great guitar players. Bruce is a great singer. What more can I say? So for this one, based on the fact that there I am at 3 o'clock in the morning singing to it and playing air guitar and playing air bass, I'm going to give this another 5 out of 5, just like I did Fleetwood Mac Rumors, but don't depend on that, folks. I have another reviewing the reviewer coming up where I may not be as favorable, but we'll take it as it comes. Anyway, my voice is shot, so I'm going to wish you all a good night and have a pleasant tomorrow. Please subscribe if you haven't. Jack Toledano, all or not according to Jack. Have a good one, folks.